There is a kind of noise in this world that doesn't echo through the air, it echoes through your skull. It is the kind that seeps into the spaces where your thoughts should be, the kind that dissolves the outline of who you are. You wake up, and the chorus begins. Demands, alerts, opinions, expectations, a marketplace of shouting souls, each one performing, each one begging to be watched, followed, validated. And in that storm, your own voice becomes a faint whisper you struggle to hear. Something inside you starts to suffocate, though you can't explain why. The modern world sells noise disguised as importance. Every comparison feels urgent. Every notification feels like proof that you still exist. And yet, with each moment you react, you lose a piece of your inner territory. The noise invades you not by force, but by seduction. It convinces you that being seen is survival, that visibility is oxygen, that the world will forget you the moment you step away. You begin to mistake attention for identity, and in that confusion, you become hollow. But the ancient warriors walked a different path. They did not run into chaos, they walked into silence. They sharpened themselves, not by being noticed, but by disappearing from the noise that polluted ordinary minds. Musashi believed that clarity is born from detachment, not attention. A warrior does not shout to be heard. He retreats to listen to the truth. Most men drown out. To become ghost-like is not an escape. It is not hiding. It is a return to the essence the world has been trying to steal from you. When you move toward silence, you do not become weaker, you become sharper. And in a world addicted to shouting, the sharpest man is the one who no longer needs to raise his voice. There is a rare power in being someone the world cannot predict. Musashi wrote of standing where the enemy never expects you. But he was not speaking only of battle, he was speaking of life. A ghost is not absent, he is simply he moves through the world with a quiet presence that unsettles the frantic, because they cannot read him, cannot categorize him, cannot pull him into their noise. In modern life, invisibility is not disappearing physically, it is refusing to feed the machine of constant self-announcement. You do not proclaim your opinions, you do not broadcast your goals, you do not perform your progress for applause. You act without commentary, you move without witnesses, you become a presence that is felt rather than displayed. There is a river that carves mountains, yet no one hears it demanding attention. Storms scream themselves into exhaustion in hours, but rivers reshape the earth over centuries. The world worships storms and ignores rivers, but only one of them leaves a permanent mark. When you choose invisibility, you begin to cultivate an inner gravity. People sense something in you but cannot name it. They feel your steadiness, your refusal to rush, your lack of need for validation. It pulls at them, silently. You become the kind of man who enters a room and doesn't chase attention, yet attention rearranges itself around you. This is the paradox of invisible presence. The less you try to be seen, the more impossible you become to overlook. Becoming a ghost is not about erasing yourself. It is about building a self so quiet, so deliberate, so inwardly aligned that no noise in the world can distort it. Musashi said that the greatest warrior was the one whose spirit remained unmoved. When you master invisible presence, you become unreadable. And in a world full of men who broadcast everything, unreadability becomes a form of power. Before Musashi struck, he moved slowly, almost lazily. Observers mistook it for softness, but it was the stillness of a man who refused to be rushed by the rhythm of others. Quiet steps create precision. Quiet steps create inevitability. Yet the modern world hurls itself forward, sprinting with no direction, convinced that speed is proof of progress. You feel this pressure constantly. Hurry, decide, answer, respond. The world demands frantic motion, because a frantic man is easy to manipulate. Quiet steps are an act of rebellion. The discipline begins with presence, doing one thing without scattering your mind into 1,000 fragments. When you drink water, you drink water. When you walk, you walk. When you speak with intention. You do not blur your actions with the clutter of divided attention. The ghost moves one step at a time, but every step is deliberate enough to cut through the fog of modern chaos. Throughout the day, you create moments where you stop feeding the world your attention. You let the roar fade just enough to hear your own mind again. These small pauses become a ritual, and with each one, your mind regrounds itself. You begin to feel your thoughts settle, like dust falling in a deserted temple. You begin to see clearly. Imagine walking through a forest where every leaf can hear your intention. That is what quiet steps feel like. Fully alive, fully aware, fully precise. You become a man whose decisions echo deeper because they come from a place of clarity rather than urgency. Slowness, in this world, is a psychological weapon. You cannot seduce a man who is not rushing. You cannot pressure him. You cannot bend him. The world loses its grip on the man who chooses his steps instead of reacting to the noise. Quiet steps do not make you slow. They make you and in a world racing toward nowhere, the man who moves with deliberate stillness becomes the only one truly in control. Visibility has become the currency of modern existence. The hooks are everywhere. Likes, reactions, tags, messages, tiny signals that whisper, "You are still here," right? Without realizing it, you begin to feed on these crumbs. You start measuring yourself by the world's applause. You watch for signs that others see you, approve of you, remember you. The world trains you to believe that, if no one is watching, you are nothing. But Musashi had nothing but disdain for audiences. He forged his art in solitude, not because he feared people, but because he refused to let their gaze distort his path. A warrior who seeks applause becomes predictable, and a predictable warrior dies. A ghost cuts the threads of visibility. He recognizes the trap. The more you need the world to witness your life, the more power you give it over you. So he withdraws, gently at first, then brutally. He stops explaining, stops announcing, stops hoping for recognition. He stops feeding the world's need for him. Imagine armor plated in gold, shiny, beautiful, heavy, and easy to spot from miles away. That is what modern visibility is. It makes you a target. It exposes your insecurities, your desires, your weaknesses. When you shed that armor, when you remove your need to be seen, you move with a freedom most men will never taste. Redefined strength is this: moving with no one's permission and no one's witnessing. To act for the sake of the act. To pursue what matters, even if no one claps. To build in silence, develop in silence, rise in silence. The ghost lives without the world's confirmation, and for that reason, he becomes untouchable. The liberation is violent, but it is holy. It is the point where you realize visibility was never proof of life, it was a leash. And once you sever it, you walk with a kind of power that cannot be photographed or quantified. A power that belongs only to you. There is a silence so deep that it becomes a homeland, not an absence of sound, but the presence of your truest self. Modern silence feels foreign because you have been trained to fill every empty moment with stimulation. The world fears quiet men because they cannot be swayed by noise. And so it convinces you that silence is loneliness, boredom, insignificance. But for a warrior, silence is the very ground he stands upon. Musashi retreated to a cave at Rikundo, not to escape the world, but to hear himself without interference. It was in that stillness that he wrote the Book of Five Rings, a masterpiece born not from chaos but from disciplined isolation. In that cave, thoughts arranged themselves like stones in a Zen garden, deliberate, meaningful, unhurried. Your own mind can become that cave, a place where thoughts are not scattered like debris in a storm, but placed with intention. Internal minimalism becomes a form of strength. You clear out the noise, the unnecessary narratives, the emotional clutter. You create an inner fortress built not of walls, but of clarity. Silence itself becomes a weapon. A man who does not respond cannot be manipulated. A man who chooses when to speak holds the rhythm of every conversation. The battlefield bends around the person who refuses to rush into noise. Even your emotions become disciplined. Anger cools in silence. Fear dissolves. Clarity rises. The more you cultivate this inner fortress, the more you notice the world's chaos bouncing off you harmlessly. You move through your days with a rhythm that is entirely your own. Slow, sharp, sovereign. You are no longer pulled by trends, distractions, or the panic of the crowd. You stand like a mountain, still and unmoved, even as storms howled around you. This kind of silence is not passive. It is alive. It breathes with intention, and once you claim it, once you build your identity upon it, the world loses its ability to confuse you. You become a man guided from within, not driven from without. A ghost who is more real than the noisy shadows that surround him. Most men fear the shadows because they cannot bear what they might find there. They keep themselves busy, stimulated, distracted, anything to avoid meeting the parts of themselves they have abandoned. But a ghost lives where others refuse to look. He steps willingly into solitude, not as punishment, but as a proving ground. In the quiet, he confronts the truths that once hid behind the noise. Solitude is a fire. It burns away weakness, false identities, performative desires. It exposes you to yourself with a harsh clarity that society works tirelessly to protect you from. Modern distractions are not entertainment, they are anesthetics. They keep you numb enough to avoid the difficult work of becoming who you are meant to be. Ancient warriors understood what the modern man forgot. The self is a battlefield, and the enemy is often within. To sit alone without reaching for your phone, without running from your thoughts, without drowning discomfort, that is a duel most men will never fight. But it is the duel that forms you. Imagine holding a torch in a cave. At first, the darkness terrifies you. Then the flame grows steadier, revealing shapes you had never seen, forgotten dreams, unresolved fears, desires you never admitted, strengths you never recognized. Solitude does not create these shadows, it merely allows you to see them, and once you see them, you become unmanipulable. A man who knows his inner shadows is immune to external ones. The world cannot frighten him with loneliness, cannot confuse him with noise, cannot seduce him with shallow comforts. He walks through life with the calm of someone who has already met the darkest parts of himself and did not turn away. To own your shadows is to own your power. A ghost is not hiding from life, he is purified by his solitude, and because he fears nothing within, he fears nothing outside. Musashi's footwork was legendary not because it was fast, but because it was unreadable. He never moved the same way twice. He created no patterns, revealed no habits, showed no predictable rhythm. His opponents couldn't anticipate him because he refused to be consistent in the ways ordinary men are consistent. This was not just technique, it was psychology. To move like a phantom in life, you must remove your emotional tells. The world watches for them. It waits to see where you react, where you flinch, where you expose your desires. Every outburst, every complaint, every boast becomes a map of your weaknesses. But a ghost stops giving the world these maps. He speaks less, reveals less, moves without broadcasting his intentions. Your goals become sacred ground, not to be announced, not to be shared prematurely, not to be performed for approval. You act in silence, you build in silence, you transform in silence, and then, without warning, you appear where no one expected you to be. Think of a shadow on a wall. It shifts as the sun moves, impossible to grasp, impossible to predict. Its shape changes without warning, yet it never announces the change. You, too, become fluid, a man who adapts without explaining, evolves without seeking validation, strikes without hesitation. Unpredictability becomes authority. People cannot control what they cannot read. They cannot anticipate a man who does not show his emotional cards. They cannot manipulate someone who refuses to reveal his mental movements. And so your silence becomes a strategy. Your unreadability becomes a shield. This is not secrecy born from fear. It is discipline born from power. When you move without announcing, you reclaim a sovereignty most men have traded away for applause. You become a phantom in the world's battlefield, always present, never exposed. There is a paradox at the heart of ghosthood. The less you try to influence the world, the more profoundly you do. Ghosts shape rooms they never enter. They leave impressions through the discipline of absence, through the weight of their silence, through the clarity of their inner alignment. In an era overflowing with noise, disappearance becomes a form of dominance. When you withdraw from the world's desperation, the endless shouting, the constant self-exposure, the frantic need to be recognized, your value increases. Rarity is power, and presence is no longer rare in a world where everyone displays themselves endlessly. Absence becomes precious again. Think of a distant mountain. It does not move. It does not speak. It does not chase attention, yet the entire landscape orients itself around it. That is the influence of a ghost. He becomes a fixed point of quiet certainty in a shifting world. His actions, though silent, carry far. His presence, though rare, is remembered. He becomes the man who says little, yet shapes the behavior of those around him simply by the way he lives. Musashi embodied this. He spoke sparingly, moved deliberately, and remained unreachable. And because of that, centuries later, his words still cut through time like a blade drawn in slow motion. His absence became legacy. To become a ghost is not to vanish. It is to return to the world unbound, free from the chains of attention, noise, and performative identity. You walk through life lighter, sharper, more grounded. You stop reacting and begin choosing. You stop performing and begin being. You move with a certainty that does not need explanation. This is influence through presence, and influence through absence. A duality the modern man has forgotten. But once you embody it, once you master the quiet rhythm of ghosthood, you become something rare. A man who does not shout, yet is heard. A man who does not display himself, yet is seen. A man who does not chase the world, yet leaves a mark it cannot erase. Return as the ghost, not to disappear, but to live untethered, unshaken, and utterly your own.